We often talk about astrology in terms of isolated energy. We say someone has an Aries sun or a Scorpio moon, as if those archetypes exist in a vacuum. But ungrounded energy needs an arena. A zodiac sign alone is entirely abstract until it has a specific place to land and manifest in the physical world. That place is what astrologers call a house. These are not literal physical buildings. They are nested domains of psychological and practical experience, the specific fields where our internal energy collides with the external environment. To map the vast, chaotic spectrum of human life, this system relies on precise geometry. The chart is segmented into exactly 12 distinct fields of embodiment. Every possible human experience, from acquiring resources to facing hidden fears, is assigned a dedicated spatial location within this wheel. When planetary energy enters the chart, it is funneled directly into one of these numbered slices. A planet passing through a specific house takes an abstract archetype and translates it into a tangible event or an acute psychological state in a person's life. Without this architecture, astrology remains purely theoretical. By structuring life into these 12 domains, it becomes an exact, geometric map charting how consciousness moves into matter. Looking at this diagram, a horizon line cuts directly across the center of the wheel. The lower hemisphere, sitting entirely below that line, represents the internal, hidden, and personal foundation of the individual. The cycle begins at the far left edge with the first house, also known as the ascendant. This is the initial spark of individual identity, the moment self-awareness crosses the threshold and enters a physical body. From there, the ego anchors itself. The second house maps the expansion into material resources and personal values, while the third house governs the immediate, practical awareness of the surrounding environment and the initial development of language. The descent continues into the very bottom of the wheel, the fourth house. This is the nadir, representing our deepest subconscious roots, our psychological safety, and ancestral origins. Moving back upward, we reach the fifth house of creative output, followed by the sixth house. Here, the individual must integrate bodily routines, discipline, and the daily habits required to physically sustain themselves. Notice the isolation in the sequence. This entire progression, from the spark of identity to the maintenance of the physical body, occurs with ever interacting with society at large. The lower hemisphere maps a necessary biological and psychological sequence. A robust, stable internal root system is the absolute prerequisite for any viable outward growth. Once that internal foundation is built, the individual crosses the horizon line into the upper hemisphere. This marks the psychological shift from the private, solitary self into the public, interpersonal world. Immediately across the horizon sits the seventh house. As a direct geometric mirror to the first house of the self, the seventh house governs one-on-one partnerships. It forces the individual to negotiate their identity with the other. The trajectory moves upward through the eighth house of shared resources, expanding into the ninth house of broad philosophies, until reaching the highest point in the chart. The 10th house represents the peak of social integration, mapping a person's public legacy and worldly authority. The ego then steps out of individual authority and into the 11th house, the realm of large collective networks, societal structures, and shared humanitarian goals. Finally, we reach the threshold of the 12th house. Having experienced the entirety of the physical and social world, the individual ego dissolves, returning its isolated identity back into the unseen, universal subconscious. Look closely at how these domains interact. Perfect glowing triangles, known as trines, form geometric pathways that transfer energy between the inner and outer fields of experience smoothly. The upper hemisphere demonstrates that our external reality is not random. The society we engage with, the partners we choose, and the legacy we leave are structurally anchored in direct geometric relation to our inner psychological state. This entire architecture remains static until activated by planetary movement. This is what astrologers call a transit. You can think of a transit as a moving cosmic hand sweeping over the face of a clock. This visual maps exactly how that works. As a planet passes over a specific house, it acts as an activation timer. It brings focused, highly specific psychological pressure, or momentum, to one exact domain of your life at a time. We can also see how these transits interact with each other. This sharp 90-degree angle drawn between two transiting planets is called a square. It pinpoints the exact architectural location of a person's current internal friction, often locking a private, personal house in a tug-of-war with a highly public house. Read correctly, this geometry removes the panic from our daily struggles. It replaces fear-based, fatalistic predictions with a language of objective self-observation. There is immense psychological relief in recognizing that a heavy period in your career or sudden tension in a relationship is not a permanent flaw. It is a localized weather pattern moving through a specific room in your chart. By treating houses as nested life fields, astrology gives us a profound, geometric blueprint for mapping, understanding, and mastering the human experience in its totality.